Hey, everybody. Welcome to unofficially season 2 of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. It's episode 53. I'm Cody. I'm here with Justin and Joe, the Power Bros. And we're ready to kick this off with some high octane energy here in season 2. So we're going to talk about the topic we've all been waiting for since we started the podcast, the Star Wars movies.
My lightsaber is fully ignited.
Well, that was a good season 2, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. We made it 30 seconds. Let's see here. We'll let the guys tell us what they've been up to recently before we jump into all things that George Lucas ruined. Let's go to Justin. What have you been up to recently?
Honestly, this past week, I've been preparing for this episode. I tried to be as thorough as I could with this and watch all of the movies, not all within the past week, but within the past several weeks. And I crammed a lot of them into the last, 6 or 7 days or so.
That's what she said.
And so that's really been.
So how many did you get through?
I got through all except one. And when we get to that one, I'll tell you which one it is.
Okay. Damn, that's impressive.
Yeah, that includes ones that I thought we were going to be covering, but apparently we're not because I'm the only professional here.
So that's dedication.
The movies and the holiday special, I also sat through.
You poor man.
I made a pledge to not watch B. Arthur after her passing. I couldn't do it, so.
That said, though, I am currently broadcasting from the frozen wasteland of Hoth. It was like negative 19-degree wind chill here today where I am, and oh boy, it's it's been a week. It's been it's just frigid temperatures the entire time. I'm glad to not have to go anywhere this weekend.
Nice. That's a real picture of you in the background there? I think so.
I mean, yeah. You get to
work. Let's pass over to Joe. It looks like it's pretty hot where Joe's at. Joe, how you doing?
It's getting hot in here. I'm doing pretty good. I have not been as dedicated to this as Justin, so I've been spending my free time doing a lot of other things. A couple quick things I just wanted to mention. One thing I've been playing recently, I mentioned to you guys in our chat previously, but they released a remastered version of the first Portal game for PC. It's if you own the original Portal, you can get this for free. It's called Portal with RTX. And you have to have, I believe, a pretty high-end graphics card in order to run it like in its full glory, but Portal is one of my favorite games of all time, and this remaster just looks beautiful. I mean, it's the exact same game gameplay-wise and, has all the same level design, humor, everything, but just kind of a fresh coat of paint, and it looks beautiful. So you have a PC that can run that, I highly recommend. Another thing that I've been watching related to gaming, which I think Brett actually mentioned on your last episode, is The Last of Us, the series based on the PlayStation game.
Did you cry?
I cried so hard, Cody.
Oh,
I heard a lot of people cried.
So the series in general is like incredible. It's by far the best property based on a video game that I've ever seen. Not that that's a high bar to cross, but it's also one of the best television series I have seen in the past several years. And I think Cody is referring to, without saying anything spoilery, the third episode of this first season, which is the most recent episode that just aired this past Sunday, is just like one of the most beautiful and like heart-wrenching episodes of television I've ever seen. So highly, highly recommend that if you have HBO or HBO Max.
I actually know very little about the game and less about the TV show, but my question, because I saw the headlines on episode 3, my question is that self-contained plot within that episode that brings out the emotions, or is that build on the first 2?
So most of the episode is kind of a side story. There is a framework at the start and finish of it that like ties into the main thrust of the plot, but the bulk of the episode is kind of a side story, and that's really where all that stuff comes from. It's it's focused on two characters who do appear in the first game, but they're like very, kind of more minor characters.
Okay.
But it's really what I like about this series is that they're building out the world of the games in like a very just strong, amazing way. Like I feel like they're really, they're really trying to explore the title The Last of Us and kind of, what that means. Not just the last people, but like the last remnants of humanity that people are clinging to. And it really seems to be focused on, exploring kind of what is left behind when there is this apocalyptic event and, can people still find community and connections with each other and what is important amidst all this really at the end of the day. So it's exploring very human questions, which I mean, the game does as well. But I feel like the series is kind of diving even more into that without straying, too far from the plot of the game. Like it still feels very true to the game. It just feels like it's expanding on it in some great ways.
Okay.
Um, one
I would
last
probably
thing,
watch that if I had access. I do not.
I feel like you might actually like it. It's
that bad,
which is rare, but no, I mean I do think you might like it. It's
Okay.
like
Well, it has the best part of the Mandalorian, right? Baby Grogu.
no, it's got the other one. It's
The
got Mando
armorer?
himself.
Oh, a rando
Um,
himself. Interesting.
yeah, and what's her face? Little Lady Mormont from Game of Thrones
Oh, dear God.
Oh,
plays Elliot, and she's great. I mean, they're both amazing. Like they're both great in those roles too. So
She's terrifying.
Lee Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, in the Game of Thrones, she was
Yeah,
terrifying.
she's fantastic in Game of Thrones.
She's like, I will fuck you up.
But one last thing I want to give a shout out to is a movie that nobody is currently able to watch,
Hmm.
which
um,
I watched last weekend as part of the Sundance Film Festival's streaming offerings, which were only available during the festival. And it is a movie called Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls. And this is a movie that I actually backed on Kickstarter a couple years ago.
Oh, God.
And I don't know if you guys have seen, if you've seen any of the like YouTube viral videos with Weird Satanist Guy.
yeah.
No.
It's like it's Weird Satanist Guy or like Weird Arby's Guy or like there's a series of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's like kind of like typical super nerdy neck beard with like the little fedora and stuff. So the guy who created that character's name is Andrew Bowser, and he is actually a filmmaker and like, director in his own right. He's made a couple movies at this point. But he actually was a co-host of a podcast I listened to for several years called Bizarre States, which was about like paranormal and spooky stuff, which I've been to. But he did a Kickstarter a couple of years ago to try to create a feature-length movie based around that character, Onyx the Fortuitous, who is the Weird Satanist guy. And it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Like, even being a fan of his, my biggest concern going into the movie was that character would wear super thin after like 5 or 10 minutes, let alone for an entire movie. But I think he's like conscious of that and finds he kind of like dials it down but
Cool.
hopefully it'll get picked up and distributed. It's a fun, really like throwback horror comedy.
Oh,
Like his
okay.
inspiration was like a lot of the like 80s movies like Ghostbusters or Fright Night. So Onyx Fortuitous, Talisman of Souls, keep an eye out for it.
Nice.
But I think you guys would probably enjoy it. It's just a lot of kind of dumb fun.
I'll keep an eye out for it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what have I been up to? I've been super busy. I also was planning to watch a ton of these movies and got through 2 and about 2/3. Sadly only myself, but I've seen these all at least a few times straight through the whatever the right word for 9 is. I don't know what that would be. I'm escaping me.
Menology?
Something. I don't know. But
I
other than
have some
that,
words for episode 9.
yeah, save that. Other than that, though, I've been playing a little more Dying Light, still going on that. Haven't had a lot of time, though. It's just been a really busy week. I had trivia night, which I put some pictures up online of last night. Our team won the county trivia night, so we got a nice, huge donation for a charity that we had picked. So that was cool. And Scholastic Bowl is still running crazy. Tomorrow morning, I got to get up super early to get to school to ride a bus to our conference tournament tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. Our JV team, I think, may have a shot. We'll see. They're probably like the second. They finished first, but they're probably the second best team in the league. So we'll see how they do tomorrow. We won't comment on the varsity team. But anyway. Beyond that, not much. Actually, one thing. We started as a family because we're kind of in a lull. There's no Star Wars shows out. Even though we haven't finished Andor yet. And there's no Marvel shows out at the moment, so we kind of took it upon ourselves to try one of the shows I had sitting on the back burner on Netflix. So we started, was it Lock and Key that it's called, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we started episode 1 of that. We just got to halfway through the first episode, but I'm hoping it's entertaining enough for the whole family with their respective ages. We left off on kind of a creepy part halfway through episode 1, so we'll see if my son can take it or not, because he's kind of a scaredy cat when it comes to some of that stuff. But that's really it. So let's jump into this. Let's do it.
All right.
Are you ready for this?
Ready as I'm going to be.
All right. So first I have 6 pages on how George Lucas got the idea for Star Wars. So I'll start with that. Just kidding. So what we're going to do tonight is talk about the Star Wars movies, but we wanted to put a little twist on our usual formula where we come up with like a top 10 list or rank things against themselves or each other. So what we did tonight was had the hosts actually rate
a top 11 list.
Yeah, that would have been the simple route to take. But we actually rated each movie from 1 to 10, meaning we could have, each host could have multiple movies with the same rating, or maybe you have some numbers that no movie earned along the spectrum, but we're going to average the 3 ratings out for each movie and then come up with what our best and I guess worst overall Star Wars movies are. So as Justin mentioned here, we have episodes 1 through 9 and Solo and Rogue One. We did not include officially some of the other trite shrivel that he watched this week, and we'll let him chime in about those as we go through.
Okay.
So we decided after some debate here to go through these in chronological release date, not the plot line of the movie, but the order they were released in cinemas. And we're going to, I guess for each one here, just briefly, like in 2 sentences, I just have a summary of the movie. And then I was curious because I actually decided to do a little research myself this week and spent some time just kind of recapping which characters made their first appearance in that movie, because I do feel like that influences my numbers a little bit, to be quite honest. And then the hosts can have some comments on this with anything they want to say about the movie. And then we're each going to give it a rating. And we'll average them up behind the scenes here and move on to the next one, rinse and repeat until we get through episode 9, or as we call it, not The Mandalorian, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so let's kick it off with episode 4. Joe, are we doing colons tonight or not?
I believe you mean Star Wars episode 4, A New Hope.
Yes. Did you see how good of a job Brett's been doing in the episodes he's been on?
Listen, I have noticed Brett's colon.
He really has.
Who hasn't?
Really been doing a good job here. All right, so A New Hope. So the quick recap of this one, we're not going to go through the full story here for everybody, but basically in a sentence or two, it says the Imperial forces, under orders from the cruel Darth Vader, hold Princess Leia hostage in efforts to quell the rebellion against the Galactic Empire. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo capture the Millennium Falcon, work together with the companion droid duo R2-D2 and C-3PO to rescue the beautiful princess. I didn't write this. Help the Rebel Alliance and restore freedom and justice to the galaxy. So characters that we were introduced to, this was obviously the OG, so we kind of had to set up the world. So this has first appearances of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Leia Organa, Ben Kenobi, or Obi-Wan as we'd find him later, Chewbacca, R2-D2, Han Solo, and Grand Moff Tarkin, I suppose, would be like another pretty big character there. So what do you guys think of this first one?
It stinks.
Terrible. Next.
I remember I used to like years and years ago. I used to be a bit harsher on this one because it really is just taking the hero's journey. You know, the archetypal. You know, the call to heroism, the rejection of the call, the crisis. You know, all that. It was following that.
Jesus Christ, man. Have you ever had fun in your life?
Well, this is the thing. That's why I said years and years ago. And I thought, oh, well,
when did you first see this movie?
When I was I was young.
Were you like an 8-year-old talking about the hero's journey?
Um, no, but honestly, when I was growing up, this isn't the one they always showed on TV. The ones they always showed on TV were episodes 5 and episode 6. So I only saw this one like in bits and pieces until later on in life. And at that point, it was kind of like, well, this is it. Okay, yeah, it's derivative. It's kind of formulaic, but over the years, I've really mellowed on it because that whole cycle exists for a reason. Because it is so notable, it is so iconic, and it works so well in so many stories. And just because something sticks to that pretty closely, like episode 4 does, that's not a bad thing. And I've come to terms with that. And having come to terms with that, I really enjoy this one. It's a comfort movie that I can just sit down and watch pretty much anytime. So I was just, and not to just call this my own hero's journey, but I did come not full circle, but I did reject the structure of this for the longest time until I finally came to accept it.
Oh my God, he just meta hero journeyed this.
Oh Jesus. I'm leaving. You guys have fun.
But yeah, I like it.
Joe, you want to comment? You want me to go?
You go for it. I don't know how to follow that.
This is so Star Wars is a weird one for me because this entire franchise is something I've always, well, I shouldn't say always, because this is something I had seen a lot as a kid, but never was like into. I don't even know for sure that I had seen like the edited or like, I probably watched these on TV, I guess is what I'm saying, as a child. So seeing like the first time of actually watching one of these all the way through, probably I was older, I would guess, because I don't think anybody in my family was into these at all. Like science fiction was not really a genre that my mom liked, or I'm trying to think of what else. I watched a lot of movies with my aunt, my uncle. So there's a chance I might not have seen these in their entirety all until later on in life. But I always loved the idea of Star Wars. I'm always collecting toys, and I had video games and books and all sorts of things about this franchise. The weird thing about it is when I really like today, or like even in the last 5-10 years, stop and think about this franchise, it's like one that I love, and then I'm like, why do I love this? And I really have a hard time answering that sometimes, if I'm being 100% honest. And when I go back and watch the original trilogy, they don't hold up as well to me as I think people love them based on nostalgia. And it could just be because I don't have that nostalgia for these movies, where I'm like, Goonies, yeah, best movie ever. Like other people are like that for Star Wars. And I get that. It makes sense. It's just not how I experienced them. That being said, this is a great movie. I recognize that. Obviously, the world building here kind of puts us in that galaxy far, far away and lets us introduce the core group of people that are going to be with us for only 3 movies, right, George Lucas and Star Wars people? No, not okay. Luke gets on my nerves here, though. I'll be honest. In this one, he's a whiny little biatch, and based on a movie I was just watching earlier today, he's still a whiny little biatch much later on, as it turns out. But that's neither here nor there. And how does that shot blow up the Death Star? Somebody's got to explain that to me again. Is that like
it goes in the Death Star's poop hole?
Yeah, but it goes like this way.
Yeah, I know. But it's going in like an exhaust port, which goes to like the main guts of the Death Star. I don't know.
But then
your favorite movie is literally about the plans for the Death Star, so you should know all about it.
It's not my favorite movie, but all right. So you do want to do ratings as we go with these, or you want to do ratings at the end? After you talk.
Can I talk?
Well, I'm saying, do you want us to do ratings?
I thought we were just gonna. I think we should just do it as we go along.
Sure. That works for me.
You mean do you mean after each of us talks, or after all 3 of us have talked about?
Yes.
I feel like at the end of each movie, after we're done with the discussion
all
for
right.
each movie.
Yeah.
Fine, then,
Yeah.
Joe, talk.
Well,
Dear listeners.
I do have the nostalgia for Star Wars that you gentlemen seem to both be missing. When I was in grade school, I actually originally was a Star Trek fan and had not really gotten super into Star Wars. But when I was like 10 or so, I don't know, one of my best friends in grade school was super into Star Wars and like just converted. Well, didn't convert me. I think the whole Star Wars versus Star Trek thing is bullshit, but that's another story. Like you can like both.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got super into Star Wars at that point, and for probably until I was like late teens or in my 20s, A New Hope was my favorite of the trilogy and possibly my favorite movie. It's like a whiz bang action movie. There are laser swords. I mean, it's what is not to love when you're, a kid. There's magic. You can use your mind to like strangle people. It's got all kinds of good stuff. But I mean, it also, it introduces this iconic galaxy and these iconic characters. I mean, especially, Harrison Ford as Han Solo is just like fantastic. Like, I mean, Luke is a little whiny, I have to admit, but like most of the characters around him are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Chewbacca, who didn't have a crush on Princess Leia? Like, it's an iconic movie. It was the start of one of the great movie trilogies of all time.
The Godfather? Okay.
It would be interesting if this was the start of the Godfather I don't.
Jabba the Hutt is Don Corleone.
I don't think looking at these with more kind of educated, mature eyes. I don't think it is the best movie in the entire franchise, but I think it is still pretty high up there. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun from start to finish.
Such a heck of a lot of fun. The most heck of a lot of fun.
You guys got your ratings?
Yeah, I'm ready for this one. I can even go first if you guys want me to go first, but I'm going to clarify. I'm using a different rating scale tonight than I've used on any previous podcast.
All right, Dave. Jesus.
It is actually more Dave's scale because in thinking about this, I always say that I rate things based on anything else I could watch to compare it against. And I didn't want to do that for Star Wars.
You mean the way that most people use rating systems?
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, but that's not what I usually do, I'm saying. But tonight, that's not what I'm doing. Tonight, I'm ranking them against each other in terms of how good I think they are for Star Wars movies. So 10 is the perfect Star Wars movie. 1 would be the worst Star Wars movie. And I kind of went that way because in my mind, if I took all of these and compared all of them to most of the movies that are out there, they'd probably occupy a fairly small strata of rating, if that makes sense. So I gave this a 7 out of 10 for episode 4.
Oh,
okay. I guess I'll go next because I kind of did a similar rating scale as Cody, because I initially just had these ranked from 11 to 1, so I had to kind of adjust for that and since they were already arranged as to best Star Wars to worst Star Wars, I just sort of tried to do a rating system in that vein too. That said, episode 4, after all is said and done, I've come to think of it as an 8 out of 10.
Ooh, okay.
I'm just rating mine 1 to 10 like a normal human being. So, I mean, I will say, like, kind of caveat for my ratings that I acknowledge that it's impossible for me to remove my nostalgia, especially for the original trilogy. So somewhat of a grain of salt, but I give Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, God damn it. You're going to make me decimal math?
I got some decimals.
I got so many decimals.
Oh, you pricks. All right. We'll go back and figure out the average in a bit. All right, we're moving on to Episode 5. Empire Strikes Back. Quick summary on this one. We have Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewbacca face attack by the Imperial forces and its AT-AT walkers on the ice planet Hoth. While Han and Leia escape the Millennium Falcon, Luke travels to Dagobah in search of Yoda. Only with the Jedi Master's help will Luke survive when the dark side of the Force beckons him into the ultimate duel with Darth Vader. Dun, dun, dun. Thoughts on this one?
Luke, I am your daddy.
Oh, sorry.
What?
New characters introduced in Episode 5. Lando Calrissian, Boba Fett,
Everyone has seen these movies,
Boss,
Cody.
Dengar, Palpatine, and Yoda. Now you may begin. Episode 5. I'm just going to say, to put out there, I feel like in pop culture, most people consider this to be the gem of the early trilogy.
I think it's widely considered to be the best of all the Star Wars movies by many people.
Well, what did you guys like or dislike about this one? Can you get some more snow on the screen? Can we? Huh?
So yeah, I will say that I love this movie. It feels like a natural and realistic progression from Episode 4, where it's the classic "you win the battle, but the war isn't over" kind of approach to things. With the destruction of the Death Star at the end of Episode 4, it seems like things are on a high note, but 5 just really makes it illustrates the scope of the conflict, where the rebels are, despite their victory, they're on their heels. It feels like it is an actual war, a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. And I feel like this movie really does a great job of encapsulating that. And yeah, it's just great pacing, great tone. Yes, a lot of snow, but look where I live. I can't really I can't really fault it for that. But yeah, this I love Episode 5.
If there's any more snow, they'd have to look for an informer.
Oh God.
Oh,
that was a deep cut right there, ladies and gents.
Sure was.
Wow, go lick your boom boom now. Let's move on. Thoughts on 5, Joe?
I mean, I agree with Justin. Pretty much everything he said.
Really?
I love this movie. I mean, it's looking back, a lot of things about this movie just feel like risks. Like this movie has like just massive balls. And I say that because, I mean, Episode 4 is a lot of fun. Like it's kind of a really like lighthearted, it's kind of a kid's movie to a certain extent.
Yep.
It's just like a fun fantasy movie.
Yep.
And, Empire takes a very hard turn into darker territory. Like Justin said, it does feel more like you feel the weight of the war and kind of the consequences of that. And then there's the more personal stuff too. I mean, this is where we get the iconic revelation that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. And Luke has to kind of reckon with that.
Wait, what?
What? I know. Spoilers for a literally 40-year-old movie. I guess 43-year-old movie this year.
Let's not go there.
That
wasn't necessary.
But it's, I mean, like, there are just these, like, throughout the movie, there are these kind of more mature, like, darker themes that are brought up. And, I mean, we have another iconic moment, Han Solo getting frozen in carbonite, the "I love you, I know" exchange. But also the fact that, like, one of our heroes is just, like, frozen and taken off the playing field. And, like, the end of this movie is just a huge downer. Like, at the end of this movie, our heroes are not in any sort of good or victorious position.
Right.
Like, things feel pretty down and not very optimistic for the rebellion. And, especially coming off the heels of Star Wars, which was a fairly light movie, A New Hope, to have its sequel, like, explore these themes and then end on that note, I can't even imagine what audiences must have felt like in 1980 walking out of theaters and knowing that they have to wait 3 more years to find out what happens.
Oh God, yeah, good
Like
point.
it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, from a filmmaking perspective, again, like that just takes guts. Like you have to respect, the fact that they did that.
They
But
were like, oh, we got to wait 3 years. Why don't we check out this Grave of the Fireflies movie? This looks good.
But I mean, just as a film, and especially looking back as you kind of get older and more mature, like it's phenomenal. Like it's just a phenomenal piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, I enjoy this one a lot as well. I can't explain why, but obviously Boba Fett is a dude that I've always loved, and the whole like rogues gallery of the bounty hunters I've always loved show up in this one, and I don't really know why they're as famous as they are. Like people should know who Forlom is, but geeks do know who Forlom is, and some of these other people.
IG-88?
Yeah, well, yeah, that were out on the trail for all this stuff. This is another sweet one. It brings in a lot. Yeah,
I'm just going to keep naming them.
That's fine. Just want to get them all the way first while we're at it.
That's all right.
Okay. Just checking if you're going to throw another one out right away. But more iconic characters in this one too, like super cool. I think the Emperor is only really mentioned in the first movie, right? But then here we see the Emperor for the first time, and Yoda, of course, is kind of his counterpoint, I suppose, with the Force, if you will, and like the Grand Master on the opposite side, and he's a super cool character. Didn't really like how they just copied Grogu and put him in this movie, but that's cool. We did it anyway. Didn't enjoy that they copied Infinity War for the plot and leave it as a downer, but it's cool, whatever. Disney, come up with some new ideas. But yeah, I enjoy this one quite a bit as well. The optics of just, that frozen planet Hoth and the AT-ATs, walkers, and all the stuff that's happening on the battlefield there just looks very different from the first movie again. And that's, I think they tried to do that again with the movie after this, but I get to that in a minute. Yeah. But it does look cool. I agree. Like we both said, it kind of enhances the scale of how big this conflict is. It's not just taking place in like one type of area. This is all over the place. And I like that they had like pre-made technology for like the different areas to use as well. It seemed like we can't operate in snow. Yes, we can. And the classic like rope scene where they trip up the walkers is of course awesome as well. So there's that. Who didn't love to play that part in like the old what was that? Shadows of the Empire.
Shadows of the Empire. I was just thinking about that. Oh, that was awesome.
Love to play that in that game. I was like, that's cool. So yeah, I'm gonna give unless everybody's done here,
go for it.
I'm gonna give episode 5 : The Empire Strikes Back an 8 out of 10.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. Yeah, to me, this is quintessential Star Wars. If this is on in the background, I don't care as long as I'm not in the middle of a life or death situation. If I'm just palling around and I see this is on, I'll sit down and watch it. This is a timeless movie for me, and when I think of Star Wars, this is what I think of. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 as well.
Woo.
I agree with everything Justin said. I mean, this is...
Stop saying that. It's getting creepy.
I'm sorry.
Oh, don't worry, it'll change.
It will change, but for now, I mean, I agree with the general discourse that this is the best Star Wars movie. 10 out of 10.
It's pretty dang good.
Before we move on, though, I do need to correct something you said. This was not the first introduction of Boba Fett. That happened in the Star Wars holiday special.
Sure did.
That wasn't one of our 9 movies, Justin.
I know, but I'm just saying, in terms of factual accuracy, you are wrong.
Yes, I'm just listing them.
Do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Chewbacca's grandpa watching Wookiee porn?
I mean, since we're on the subject, okay, holiday special is basically this will be quick, I promise, since we're not covering this as a full movie. So it was a made-for-TV movie where Han is trying to get Chewbacca back to see his family for a Wookiee holiday called Life Day. That's really the plot of the film, and it's padded a lot. There's a lot of like musical numbers and little comedy gag things, but it is notable for being the first appearance of Boba Fett. It's also the first time we see Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld. And aside from, the Empire...
Don't they refer to it as Kazuk in that? I feel like they horribly mispronounce it for the entire
special. I always thought it was Kashyyyk, so it shows what I know.
But yeah, and it's aside from the obliteration of Alderaan after Leia gives the fake coordinates for the actual Rebel base, it's really the only time in the original trilogy we see the Empire just being dicks, just acting like a totalitarian regime. Like they're robbing stores, they trash Chewie's family's house, specifically focusing on like his kid's room because the kid did something to piss one of them off. They actually are just throwing their weight around as evil people, and we're seeing it rather than just being told the evil empire and whatnot. So, I mean, the movie isn't good, but it does have some notable parts. And hell, I'll throw out a rating for the holiday special: 4.6 out of 10.
Oh,
4.6 out of 10.
put that in your aggregator, Cody.
Yes. I mean, all right. Okay, we're moving on. You got the other one there? Okay, we're moving on.
So.
We're moving on to episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Luke Skywalker battles Jabba the Hutt and Darth Vader to save his comrades in the Rebel Alliance and triumph over the Galactic Empire. Han Solo and Princess Leia reaffirm their love and team with Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, the Ewoks, and the androids C-3PO and R2-D2 to aid in the disruption of the dark side and defeat the evil Empire. Emperor. Read that word wrong. Only real new character I marked in this one is Jabba the Hutt.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I mean, we get the Gamorrean guards.
Yeah.
I guess they don't have names,
yeah.
but
Fred and Ted.
oh. We get a Rancor.
We do,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
For
I
sure.
didn't.
Come
I didn't
on, man.
include the Wampas or
I
anybody
won't
else
stand
in
for your
these.
Rancor erasure.
I mean,
Just because you're a Rancor. I mean, what?
that's not called for. All right. Let's see. I know notes on number 6, Return of the Jedi. Clearly the best of the original trilogy.
I'll take point on this one for at least a little
Oh, go ahead.
bit. I forgot how damn goofy this movie was. And I say that having just come off of mentioning the holiday special. But yeah, it feels like they really tried to change the tone from episode 5, where I mean, I can understand the reasoning for that, but it also felt kind of like they were just seeing how many Muppets they could throw into a lot of these scenes, because there's a lot more like people in costumes and like little puppet things, and in the re-release a lot of terrible CGI. But it feels like they really tried to swing maybe too far in the opposite direction from 5, where 5 was really dark and it had a lot of really serious themes. The pendulum swung the other way, and maybe to its detriment, I think.
I agree.
Do you think the conversation went, 4 was a big hit. 5 was really dark. We didn't sell enough toys. 6, Ewoks everywhere.
I mean, you're probably not wrong. Because this was like at the height of Star Wars popularity, where it had been, like you said, 3 years since the last official movie, so people were chomping at the bit for this sort of thing. And if they could market it better, well, yeah, even better in their eyes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess on that note, what do you guys think of the Ewoks, like as an element to Star Wars? Do you think they fit?
I honestly never minded them. I mean, I do think that they were a cash grab, and I 1,000% believe that they were only thrown in there to sell toys. But I feel like they're kind of ruthless little fuckers. Like, honestly, like, they're pretty brutal towards the Empire. And like, I don't know. They always kind of work for me. Like they are cute, but I never felt like they were just cutesy or like overly cutesy for the sake of it.
It's kind of weird because I actually like the Ewoks quite a bit. And like, I like the toys of the Ewoks and stuffed animals of the Ewoks. But the role they serve in that movie is like an actual antagonist to the friggin' Empire. I don't buy for 1 second, because they're like, oh, look, we're going to set up this, really rudimentary catapult and hit a scout trooper over the head when he goes by.
Yeah,
I just don't believe it would happen. They're building a fucking Death Star and suddenly they're stopped by teddy bears in the forest. I don't believe it.
yeah. This movie really cemented that stormtrooper armor it's absolutely useless. I mean, against blaster fire, yeah, that's one thing. But when they're just getting hit
Seriously
in the
though,
back of the
right?
head with rocks or sticks, it's just like, no, this is dumb. Even as a kid, I was thinking this is dumb. So
I mean, my only complaint related to the Ewoks is the fact that they removed the Ewok celebration song from the special editions onward.
they did.
Not
Yeah,
just
You're
little
right.
it's just kind of
little
like generic
voices.
music now.
Huh. That's bizarre.
Yeah, at the end of Jedi, after they defeat the
Yeah.
Empire, there's like the celebration scene,
Oh yeah?
Yeah, you're
like,
right.
and there was originally a song that the Ewoks were singing in their Ewok language,
Yeah.
and I think it was first when they did the special editions in the '90s that they took that out, and then that's been the case ever since.
Yeah, that's when they started to ruin them, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Now it's just
But
like the
Yeah, you're right.
and,
Not quite like
people
that,
smiling.
but yeah, they left out the yub nub stuff and all
yeah,
that. Yeah.
um, I do want to say, going back to characters that this movie introduced, I think Cody,
Ooh,
you overlooked a very important one.
who?
Max Rebo,
The
who is the band leader in Jabba's palace. He is in the world. This is canon in the world of Star Wars. He is a very famous jizz whaler, which is a practitioner of the style of music, which is known as jizz.
kid show, everybody. It's
You're not
kid
wrong.
show.
I'm just telling the truth.
I would
Max
probably
Rebo is well known for jizz.
probably make an argument that Wicket was the bigger character, but it's fine. We didn't mention him either. But you do what you got to do.
Wicket also a big character. I believe
Yeah.
it was Warwick
You got 2 more
Davis's
movies.
first role.
Might have been.
I think he was like 13 or something at the time.
And he's
wow.
been wearing the human costume ever since.
Uh,
See what I did there? Because
yes.
spun that right around.
Anyway, I
What about all
enjoy
the?
this. What?
I was just going to re-mention. What about all those poor innocent contractors on Death Star 2?
Actually, in one of my undergrad writing classes, someone did write a story that was from the point of view of a janitor on the second Death Star.
Really?
Yeah, and just like some average schmo who is looking forward to getting off his shift, and all of a sudden everything explodes.
They knew what they were signing up for.
The guy who blew up told the story.
Well, it was.
Did he get a passing grade on that in one of the English classes?
I
can't
don't
imagine.
remember, but it was like in a data log or something. And
Dead
it was
people
floating
don't
out in
tell
space.
stories to the audience. I had that hammered in enough times.
Oh, me too.
Well, that's just because you hang out at graveyards and do questionable things. But anyway.
Oh, there's no questions about it.
All right. Well, look at the time. We got to rate this baby.
Didn't you guys miss me on this podcast? Come on.
I have.
Yeah. Episode 6.
I enjoy this movie. I do agree with Justin that it is a little on the sillier side, but I always thought it was fun. I like the Ewoks. When I was younger, I very much appreciated Princess Leia in her bikini, but now that I'm older, I see that that's slightly problematic.
For the record.
For the record, hashtag feminism. I gave Return of the Jedi a 7.5 out of 10.
7.5 out of 10. Wow. Okay. I gave episode 6 a 5 out of 10.
Wow.
Okay. No elaboration there, I guess. I gave it a 6.5. So it's still enjoyable, but it's definitely the weakest of the original 3. And yeah, it just with the goofiness of the Ewoks and all that. And speaking of Ewoks, I swear this is the last tangent because these are the last 2 movies that you guys didn't watch. So in the 80s, there were 2 major TV Ewok movies.
Jesus, did you watch both of these also?
I did.
Oh
so I'm going to spend like 5 minutes talking about them. That's all. So the first one, Caravan of Courage, has to take place sometime before this movie because there's no evidence of the Empire ever having been there. A family of humans crashes on the I'm blanking on the name of the moon. Endor. There we go. And parents either either go missing or one's injured or something. So it's up to the kids to try and look at, find help. They run into the Ewoks, adventures happen. But the most notable thing about this is I swear it sounds like it's narrated by Bob Ross. It's just, it gives it a very, folksy, calming kind of feel. Like,
I can see that.
Yeah. And over here is the lair of the giant Gorax. And, I think we're going to add some little Ewok children because, everyone needs a friend, that sort of thing. It's just, I don't know. I enjoyed it. It wasn't great. But it was a fun little time waster. I don't regret having sat through that.
I don't think I've ever watched that.
I think I saw it as a kid. I remembered certain scenes. Like,
yeah, I've definitely seen both of those.
Yeah.
The weirder thing is you just gave that plot synopsis, and I was like, no, that's the Masters of the Universe Christmas special plot line. Must have just been an 80s thing.
Maybe. Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, 3 out of 10. Which is sadly not matched by its sequel, Ewoks, The Battle for Endor.
Oh, no.
This is not a Star Wars movie, just flat out. It's like someone came to the producers and said, hey, we've got this terrible fantasy script. What can we do with it? Well, it's like, well, we can't market it the way it is, but what's popular now? Star Wars. And they just basically slapped Ewoks into this swords and swords. Did you know Endor has orcs? Endor has orcs. And
I did not know that.
The orc leader is, basically after the human children from the first movie because he thinks he needs a human to activate some sort of starship component that he thinks is magical. Never mind the fact he has a witch in his employ that knows actual magic. Like she turns into a freaking bird at one point, which again does not belong in Star Wars. This whole thing is just a mess. I actually regretted my time spent with this one significantly. So 1.3 out of 10.
1.3. Wow. It's a very specific rating scale he has here. It was based on minutes he enjoyed of the movie.
I mean, kinda. So that is all of my tangents for movies you guys haven't watched. So continue on.
All right. So we're going to take a break here from the releases until we get all the way up to episode 1. I think this was a 99, was it not?
You some people going to talk about this movie?
Oh, don't spoil it. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is now a young apprentice Jedi Knight under the tutelage of Qui-Gon Jinn, Anakin Skywalker, will later father Luke Skywalker and also become known as Darth Vader, is a 9-year-old boy who's not annoying at all in this movie. That's my notes, not his. And then, we can't forget the Trade Federation cutting off the routes to the planet Naboo, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan sent in to settle the matter. Big Trouble in Little Chinatown.
Oh, man.
New characters introduced. Qui-Gon Jinn, Padme, Amidala Palpatine, the Senator, Jar Jar Binks, Shmi Skywalker, Mace Windu with a purple lightsaber, Darth Maul, Boss Nass, Watto, and Sebulba. Best movie of the whole series.
That's just not true.
Well, I'll go first on this one because this is actually where I fell in love with Star Wars. Was with episode 1.
Oh my God!
Which I went to see in the movie theater multiple times. Still one of only two movies I've seen twice in the movie theater. The other being Austin Powers Part 2: The Spy Who Shagged Me. But let's move on from that.
Wow!
This is also where I started to
dear
get
listener,
some,
you know how I always talk about how Cody has terrible taste. It speaks for itself. Just go on, Cody.
Also, one of my favorite memories of college, amongst a very long list, would be Shopko in Marquette having an entire aisle, 40 feet, both sides of the aisle, dedicated to episode 1 merchandise, which you won't believe this, they couldn't sell.
I mean, it wasn't flying off the shelves?
Nope. But it did turn into a fun game of this week it went down another 5%, another 10%, etc. And some friends, Marco and Joe Yang, I believe, was with me as well at the time. And we went the multiple times, and I remember them getting a literal shopping cart over the top of the basket flowing with episode 1 merchandise, and they paid like $50 for it or something. They had like walking robots, walkie-talkies, like anything you could name of was like $1, $2 each. It was amazing.
Wow.
That all also being said, also was a big fan of Darth Maul as a character until they very quickly got rid of him. But that's not the point. He was a cool looking dude. I was excited. Ray Park's a great,
But did they fully get rid of him?
Well, not according to somebody's spouse. And by that I mean George Lucas. No, just kidding. All right. Exciting things about this movie. I mean, where do you begin? Wow. There's pod racing, which is pretty cool, you got to admit. There's pod racing. There was the Duel of the Fates song, which was pretty good.
Wow, so far I wrote out a list of pros and a list of cons, and so far this is my list of pros for this movie.
Yeah, it is. Sam Jackson in a Star Wars movie didn't need to happen, but there it is. It's there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Liam Neeson is a nice person to add into the series at any point.
Love Liam Neeson.
I actually like the character of Watto as well.
Oh boy, that is problematic.
Well, say what you will, I still enjoy the character. Boss Nass, who drools and spits everywhere, also enjoyed him. And most of all, I enjoyed young Anakin Skywalker. Hashtag just kidding, I did not. But I won't begin to go into all the feelings I had with Queen Amidala. Just let that go. This is where I became hooked on ladies who have a little tiny piece of lipstick that's a different color.
Oh boy, I'm just going to read my pros and cons for the prequel movies as we get to them. Pros: okay. Pod racing, Darth Maul, Duel of the Fates, Liam Neeson, and Ewan McGregor. I think Ewan McGregor was great as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I left that one out. He's not as good, but that's okay.
Cons: Gungans. So many Gungans.
A lot of Gungans.
Jake Lloyd.
Don't forget their big blue balls.
Jake Lloyd. Midichlorians. Did I mention Gungans? Over to you, Justin.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to actually let a special guest dictate some of my thoughts on this. So if you'll excuse me for just a moment.
Oh no. Does he have Jar Jar Binks in his house?
Misa used to be worst thing ever happened to this franchise. But you see, Misa kind of being like George W. Bush. At the time, used to all been thinking that, well, this guy's so stupid and annoying that nobody could ever be as bad as he. But Misa know better. See, you all just got to be waiting like 20 years or so, and something so much better be coming down the pipe for you. Sooner or later, you're all gonna be looking at old Jar Jar like he the good old days.
Is Blue at your house? I'm joking.
Yeah.
Well, that just happened.
Where do I begin with this movie?
Sounds like you're gonna start with Jar Jar, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, is he better or worse than midichlorians? I mean, midichlorians never get mentioned again after this point, so I mean, theoretically, Jar Jar's not that bad, but he's still terrible.
Young Anakin, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, young Anakin is just, he sucks the life out of every scene he's in, pretty much. The pod racing was all right, I guess. Yeah. I don't understand why the announcer with two heads, why they spoke different languages.
You don't talk about Greg Proops that way.
But the last time I saw this movie before I revisited it for this review was when it came out in theaters back in like 1999. And I didn't watch episode 2 or episode 3 until a few years ago because I hated this movie so much. That, I think, kind of sums up my thoughts on episode 1, unless I have anything else here. No, that's about it. This movie is pain.
I will say it also says something about I don't know about in the moment, because I think when this came out, this was like huge, right? Because Star Wars was back and people were like, oh my God, we didn't think we'd ever see another Star Wars movie. And you can make your comment that follows up with that. But with the huge gap there was between episode 6 and then going back here to episode 1, like that was pretty monumental that this came back out and the series was going to continue again. So you got to say that about it. And I do think when it initially came out, people were like, this is the shit. Like, we're getting new stuff. We're getting the backstory of Anakin. This is going to be great. We get Obi-Wan when he's young and can actually like do stuff. Isn't like a crusty old guy who didn't want to get paid to do the movie, but let's not talk about that. And did I mention all of the fun enjoyment the audience would get from a trade embargo being enforced?
Oh man, if you want trade politics, just wait till we get to the next one.
But it does also say something that at least Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, I know both like suffered terribly from their performances in this movie. I mean, and when I say suffered terribly, I mean like the audience has chewed them to where they probably have PTSD really badly at this point. So there is kind of a downer note on that part. But anyway, yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah,
you can just hit pause. They got to deal with the shit still. So
that's true.
All right. Well, that being all said, my enjoyment of all of this, as I mentioned, has kind of got me fully into the franchise proper, and rewatching this several times since then, it has gone downhill for me, I will say, in the years since. So I'm going to drop this all the way down to a 5 out of 10 on this one.
Okay. Since there's the silence that has to be filled, 1.5 out of 10 from me. Slightly better than Ewok's Battle for Endor.
Oh, ouch.
Wait, what was the comparison to Rings of Power?
Ooh.
Is that what you just said? Oh, I thought you just said that.
I said Ewok's Battle of Endor.
Oh.
But,
didn't you give Rings of Power like a 2?
It was 1 or a 2. I don't remember which.
I think it was a 2.
What if the Rings of Power, instead of elves, had Gungans? What would that mean? We must build the big mine thingy.
I'm actually closer to Cody on this one. I mean, I do have the nostalgia for Star Wars. When this movie was coming out, I was just so excited to see another Star Wars. And even though the movie itself is a mess, and like even when it first came out, I was disappointed in it. I was also just on some level happy to see lightsabers and Jedi doing Jedi stuff. So I will give it a 4 out of 10.
I mean, we did mention the Duel of the Fates, but the 2-on-1 lightsaber scene was pretty dang good.
That whole
at least at first it was pretty good.
Awesome.
Then Qui-Gon died, and then Darth Maul died, and they only left the worst of the 3 characters to live.
You shut your mouth hole.
All right. Well, we'll total that up in a second here. We're moving on to the next one here. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This is 10 years after the Phantom Menace events take place. The Republic continues to be mired in strife and chaos. A new separatist movement encompassing hundreds of planets and powerful corporate alliances pose new threats to the galaxy that even the Jedi cannot stem. These moves, long planned by an as of yet unrevealed and powerful force, lead to the beginning of the Clone Wars and the beginning of the end of the Republic. That got dark. New characters introduced here. I put Count Dooku and Jango Fett. Anybody else come to mind?
Not off the top of my head.
Very good.
No.
Joe, you sounded like you had some good comments on this one.
Not really. I just I think this is the worst of the prequel trilogy. I think it's just so mired down in like politics and the trade federation bullshit, and like it forgets that it's supposed to be a Star Wars movie. For my pros for this one, I have Sir Christopher Lee, who's always great. I have Natalie Portman as a pro for this one because she was a little too young in episode 1. But I think she's older. Like, I think she is better as an actress in this movie as well. Her character has developed a bit more, which is a lot more than can be said for Anakin, who is now played by Hayden Christensen, who fans at the time gave the nickname Mannequin Skywalker for his wooden acting. And he's just like, I mean, it's not entirely his fault because he doesn't exactly have a strong script to work with, but it feels like he's just like sleepwalking his way through this entire movie.
Yeah.
It's just not a good movie at all. There's really, I don't feel like it even has any like memorable moments or like any real redeeming points.
Strong
I
words.
I think I kind of agree that it didn't really have a whole lot of memorable moments, but in a way that sets it above episode one in my book because episode one was memorable for just how many cringeworthy scenes and lines and whatnot there were, whereas episode two was just sort of it was just there. It didn't offend me as much as one did, except for that whole the horrible romance between Anakin and uh Padme. Padme.
Admit,
Yeah, where that was. I mean,
I love you more.
I
I
swear.
love you.
Is this the one where they're on the like balcony by the lake?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Ooh,
think.
I might have to adjust my score. Hold on,
Yeah,
BRB.
where I swear, at least I know one of you has seen Manos: The Hands of Fate.
Yes.
You could replace Hayden Christensen with Torgo, and I don't think it would have hurt the love story at all. Like you aren't like the sand. You're everything.
Master says, I love you.
You're everything that's soft and smooth.
That would have made it a better movie.
Exactly. It's yeah, I that was the worst part of this for me by far. The love story, the politics stuff, whatever. Sure, I can there's stuff going on in the background, but the love story being the focal point it was just so bad and wooden and hackneyed. I that that was the worst part of the film for me by far.
So I do agree. Now that you both said it, there's really not a lot of set pieces or moments that I stand out for me in this, but there are a couple that do a little bit, at least a few settings, I guess, for me in this one. So one is the battle arena in Geonosis, where there's just like the scene with the chaos of all the Jedi sabers flying around, and they got like all the bugs flying around and all the other shit's happening. Jango Fett's in there, and it's kind of chaotic. That's kind of fun because I don't think we had seen like mass Jedi live action before that moment. So that's one completely different feel to it. But the Clone Factory, where they've ruined Boba Fett by showing him as a whiny kid also, but also like show like the Camino people that are like super tall, and that Django's like the basis of all of the clone troopers that are secretly being built. And that was kind of a cool setting. It's like a big water planet. And then we can't forget the scene where Anakin finds his mommy and then kills all the Tusken Raiders and starts his descent to the evil side.
I can forget that scene.
You can forget that. You can forget that scene. Okay. I had this at a rating, but I'm going to drop it down a little bit now. But one thing I do enjoy this movie, I will say, compared to the first one, is we actually had a few villains that didn't just bite the bullet. They actually stuck around for a later movie, which is I like when movies do that. So Count Dooku presumably was going to be the villain of the movie that's going to get killed, and he doesn't. He survives to go on to the next movie, which was kind of nice to see. And then I forget, did Django die in this one? Mace chops his head off in the arena. Is that what happens? Or is that in 3?
I think so.
I'm not sure, honestly.
I watched this one a week ago or so.
But his lightsaber's purple. Did you see that?
I did see that.
Yeah, he got a purple lightsaber.
I like his purple saber.
Yeah. I like the part where they were fighting all the bugs in the arena, and he's like, I'm sick and tired of these motherfucking bugs in this motherfucking arena. That part was good. So anyway, long story short, I'm ready for a rating. You ready?
Yes.
Ready.
I had this at a number of 6. I'm going to drop it down to 5.5 based on you guys being correct about the romance part by the water. I forgot. I really dislike that part.
Okay. This is, to me, this is the definition of kind of like an average film, including by Star Wars metrics, which is a little telling. But so I rated it a 5, largely because it actually did add something to the lore. I mean, it showed the creation of the clone army and that, so it did add something to the overall Star Wars story. So it has some merit from that. Is it a good movie? No, but it's not as horrible as some.
This is my least favorite Star Wars.
Ooh.
I give it a 3 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Sounds good. All right. Isn't this also the one you're talking about, the Trade Republic? Isn't this where there's like the 5 different leaders in the Trade Republic, and the one has like the voice box that keeps cutting out?
I think so.
I did
Yeah.
actually find that as a funny little gag, but anyway. All right, jumping ahead. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. It's been 3 years since the Clone Wars began. Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker rescue Chancellor Palpatine from General Grievous, who is our new villain here, I guess, adding in. Commander of the droid armies, Grievous escapes. Suspicions are raised within the Jedi Council concerning Chancellor Palpatine. I'm sure those are unfounded. With whom Anakin has formed a bond, asked to spy on the Chancellor, and full of bitterness towards the Jedi Council, Anakin embraces the dark side. Wonder where that's going to go. It's the only new character I really wrote down here was General Grievous. Although I guess by Joe's logic, I have to include the boga that Obi-Wan rides up the wall of the canyon as well, for including all of the wildlife here. So
I just asked that you include any and all jizz whalers.
Boga.
I liked the lizard thing. I'm not going to lie.
I didn't just like the lizard.
Yeah, it was all right.
So this is the movie that I drove around to, 8 different Burger Kings to find every one of their toys for the whole collection of like 30.
Holy crap.
I think I
You were a strange man, Cody.
I like to collect shit. It's just what I do. It's a problem, and I recognize that.
Okay.
Truth be told, this one doesn't score that highly for me. I think it's because I know we're supposed to care a lot about the Obi-Wan Anakin thing throughout these movies, and I just don't really care that much about it, I'll be honest. I find the side characters far more entertaining in these movies than either of those 2 characters. As Darth Vader, sure, that's one thing, but as like whiny bitch Anakin, that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder how this, well, especially these last 2 movies of that trilogy, would have played if they had a better actor for Anakin.
Yeah.
Better than Jake Lloyd?
I said the last 2 movies, Cody.
They should have just used Jake Lloyd for all 3. No soul in the fact that he was young in the other ones.
Yes.
I have the high ground.
Anyway, I thought this movie was okay. I didn't love it. It's not great, but I think it's my favorite of that trilogy. General Grievous is pretty cool. Gotta love him with his 4 lightsabers. We get the iconic. First of all, we get Obi-Wan with a beard, which I know we also got in Attack of the Clones, but I don't acknowledge that movie. We get the iconic "Hello There" drop in.
Hello there.
Hello there.
We get some Wookiees.
True.
We get. I like the Obi-Wan Vader duel at the end. It's not the best duel in Star Wars, but it's something.
Lava World.
Still don't love Hayden Christensen.
Nope.
And my other con is no.
That's a fair point. But I do agree this is the best of the prequel trilogy. To the point where rewatching it for the first time in several years, I liked it a lot more than I remembered liking it. Part of it is because something I forgot to mention from episode 2, hardly anything in episode 2 actually exists. Like, so much of that movie is just, at this point, bad looking CGI. Here, I mean, it feels like they used more sets. The CGI has improved. So, I mean, it felt like a more grounded film in terms of visuals and whatnot. So that helped.
Actually chopped off Hayden Christensen's appendages.
But in general, like this one, it had a lot more positive elements than the other 2 in this trilogy. Good action scenes. It had a broader scope. The whole Order 66 thing. Palpatine, or I guess I was going to say the Emperor, but the Chancellor at this point. He was kind of subtle in how he was, stringing Anakin along to, turn him over to the dark side. I thought it had some genuinely positive moments to it. It's not my favorite film in the franchise by any means, but it's better than I remembered it being, and I was really surprised giving it a second watch.
I mean, I do, as much as I dislike the fight and don't really care. I mean, I don't dislike the fight. I kind of do, because you got a little like Monty Python Black Knight type stuff going on with Anakin, who's like, tis but a
bite your
scratch,
legs off.
it's a flesh wound. But I do like the iconic, like, is that Mustafar? Is that the planet where they're fighting on the lava and everything?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty cool setting. Also, nobody mentioned the Yoda versus Palpatine fight that briefly takes place. That's kind of a big moment. Grievous, yeah, he's an interesting one, because I really liked that character at first. And then, one of the problems with Star Wars, I think, is they have always been like they feel like they have to one-up themselves to make something interesting in the next iteration, right? Because you had Darth Maul with the dual lightsaber, and I was like, that's amazing. And then suddenly, like, later movies we'll talk about here, they got like the T-shaped lightsabers, and Grievous has like 4 that he can swing continuously. And it's like, maybe enough is enough. Like the one-on-one was kind of the iconic look for these. And now, like, you have any shape you want, seemingly. Also, is General Grievous is like a robot, isn't he? Why does he have asthma?
I think he's
He's
a
like
cyborg.
he has a heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's
Like,
part organic.
yeah, he's I
it's
don't know
just
what his
a
backstory is, but I think
Really
he
bad
like
design flaw.
yes.
Okay. Anything else on episode 3 to finish the second trilogy here?
Ooh.
No. All right. Well, sounds like some of you might have been higher. Somebody else want to take point on this one?
Sure. Yeah, as I said, I like this one the best out of the 3. And I feel it sort of like in episode 2, but to a greater extent, it did add to the Star Wars lore, filling in spots, in the history that's needed to happen leading up to episode 4. And yeah, I genuinely would watch this again without like needing to be prompted. If this were on, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll give it another watch. I'm actually a little surprised at this one myself. 7 out of 10.
Wow.
Hey, this guy.
I would have to give it a 5 out of 10. Which, again, I'm rating this as a movie in general, so I think it's a pretty average movie. It's definitely not the worst of the franchise. It's definitely not the best of the franchise. So.
Sure.
And I also gave this a 5 out of 10. Just kind of the same thing. This is about middle of the road-ish for me, maybe even on a smidge on the lower side here for me. So that's that one. All right, then we get to, you guessed it, another trilogy to finish up. But wait, a couple solo acts in here. Wink, wink.
What?
As well.
You,
So we're gonna...
you, sir, are a Rogue One.
Hey. All right. So next up, we get the box office smashing episode 7 that comes back out. People had apparently forgiven them for the last 3 movies and decided to get excited about the next one that's going to come out. So we have The Force Awakens with a very short description of a new threat to the galaxy rises, and Rey, a desert scavenger, and Finn, an ex-stormtrooper, join Han Solo and Chewbacca, search for one hope of restoring peace. New characters. We have a new trilogy here, so we get Kylo Ren. Apparently, they count that as a character and an actor, but we can talk about that in a second. Rey, Poe Dameron, Finn, Supreme Leader Snoke. Missed opportunities abound here, folks. Maz Kanata, rather, General Hux, Captain Phasma, and BB-8. Wow. Who was excited when this came out?
I actually was.
I was too.
The trailer for this movie made me cry.
Did it?
Oh.
It's just old shots.
The Chewie were home part. Oh my god.
Oh.
Fucking terrible.
You didn't like it?
I hated it. No, I love this movie. I mean, again, I think I have probably by far the strongest nostalgia factor out of us 3. And I mean, that's what this movie is. This movie is like nostalgia distilled into like 2.5 hours. It's a remake of A New Hope. Like, let's not try to pretend that it's not.
Right.
But it works for me. Like, I saw this movie 3 times in the theater. And it just worked on me every single time. And it's a movie to this day that I will still rewatch. Like I still think it's just a really enjoyable movie. All the emotional nostalgia beats still work on me and hit me. I know Cody's probably going to have some things to say about some of the new characters, but I like them by and large. I know you're talking about the changed lightsaber designs that happened over the course of the franchise, but I love Kylo Ren's giant crackling lightsaber. Especially,
Yeah,
I mean, at least two of the times I saw this were at an IMAX theater, and you could like literally just feel the sound when that lightsaber ignites. And it's just like one of my favorite movie going experiences I've ever had. So I mean, I admit I have a lot of emotion and nostalgia tied into it, but I really like this movie.
Well, all right then. No, I'm not going to shit over all the characters. I mean, half of them, but not the other half. Kylo Ren, I still to this day have not been proven that Adam Driver can act whatsoever in any sense of the word, but which ruins the whole character for me because I don't know if that's how he's written or just what, but I'm like, boy, they didn't learn from Hayden Christensen. Heyo.
I like Adam
Back
Driver, and I
again.
think he does just fine.
Ray, fine. Poe, fine. Finn, no.
What's wrong with Finn?
He's like a bumbling idiot. He's like useless.
My main problem with Finn is that he gets over his PTSD really damn quick.
That's fair.
That's a good point too.
Yeah, like I mean, the opening sequence. He's freaking out because he's watching people getting shot around him, and then after he teams up with Poe, he's right behind the blasters of the TIE fighter, just like filling the hangar full of death, and he's just like woo. And it's like really.
Listen, if I ran into Oscar Isaac, I would probably get over some shit real quick too, and just do what he told me.
Interesting. Should we even begin to talk about Supreme Leader Snoke? Because that's the most disappointing thing ever. But
ooh, why don't we save that for the next movie when I know you guys are going to shit all over it?
All right.
What I'm going to say about Episode 7 is when I saw this in theaters, I realized, yes, it covers a lot of the same ground that we've seen before. I mean, it is pretty much not a shot-for-shot remake of A New Hope, but it starts with a droid being entrusted with, sensitive, important information, and running from an Imperial, or excuse me, First Order raid. It centers around an orphan who was raised on a desert planet. The main cast has to employ the services of Han Solo and Chewbacca and the Millennium Falcon, etc.
You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, it is just beat for beat for beat. At the time, I realized that, but it set the foundation for something to come. It left a lot of unanswered questions, like where did the First Order come from? How is the Republic so inept that the loss of one guy, Luke Skywalker, causes them to all fall apart? Why does C-3PO have a red arm? He mentions it. It must be important.
Who is Rey's parents?
Yeah, all of these things.
Who is Snoke? Must be somebody really important.
I do want to say, I mean, going back to the cast for a second, I do feel like Daisy Ridley as Rey is a more compelling protagonist than Luke Skywalker was, at least in A New Hope, because Luke did widely come across just like as a whiny bitch.
Yeah. Oh,
and totally I feel like Rey is capable from the beginning. Like she's living on her own. We see her like scavenging through these ship, like trying to find different things. Like she's capable of doing and of like protecting herself from the start. And then, the Force stuff that comes later is just kind of icing on the cake. So I think she is probably the best thing to come out of this new trilogy, at least until Episode 9, possibly. But I like her a lot as a character.
I didn't have a problem with her necessarily. I liked Poe quite a bit, actually, too.
Yeah.
Just like the hothead pilot, who's at least something. What about General Hux? I felt like that guy. I just couldn't believe he'd be surrounded by all that magic and be okay with that. But maybe that was just the fact that he was at Hogwarts the year before. But anyway,
Grumble.
Move on here. Captain Phasma, huh? Shout out.
Hi, Captain Phasma.
Until
Yeah,
I
me too.
rewatched these, I forgot she existed because she does so much in this trilogy.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just
I
like
mean,
one
I
of
feel
those.
like she was a wasted opportunity. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I like Gwendolyn Christie as an actress, and I think she could have been a good, like, intimidating presence in this trilogy. And
Yeah.
as Justin just kind of suggested, she really is a non-presence to a large extent.
Yeah, and despite looking so distinctive and
Yeah.
being built up as being so, so imposing, so menacing,
Yeah.
and then just so, yeah.
I also have to give a shout out to BB-8 because the fact that they introduced another cutesy droid, I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. But he stole my heart.
He's really freaking cute.
He
He's
is.
really
I
cute.
do admit.
Um,
Very expressive despite not having a face.
Yeah, he has a lot of personality.
Yeah.
Agreed. Someday I was thinking if we're like at episode 100, we should do like favorite characters from these movies or something. But anyway, anything else here on episode 7? I feel like I had another thought, but I don't know what it was now. So
I'll get to my final thoughts on it when I do my rating. So,
all right. Well, I was excited for this one. Excited for the trilogy to begin again. At least at this point, I was. As I mentioned, some of these characters are cool. Now, the problem with some of these where you didn't know where some of these characters were going to go, and that's probably going to be reflected in scores I have coming up here. But for most of these characters, I was willing to give them a shot, with the exception of Kylo Ren because hashtag can't act. But anyway, so I'm going to give this one after the hype of it ends. Oh, I know what I was going to say. We talked about how this was like basically a remake of episode 4.
Mhm.
So I'm picturing like, like a grandpa or an uncle or somebody comes over to like a kid's house and like brings them an R2D2 and C3PO toy or a Han Solo and a Chewie toy and is like, hey, little one, let's check out Star Wars. And like shows them episode 4 and then like leaves. And the little kid's like, I'm going to go reenact that with my toys I have in my room. And they like redo the whole movie with just those couple repeat characters because that's the only ones they actually have as licensed figures. And they just fill the rest in with like Barbie is Rey and here's this other guy who's Snoke. And anyway, that all being said, enjoyed this quite a bit when it came out. I think it has gone down a little bit for me in the years since then. So I'm going to drop this down to a 6 out of 10 for me.
Oh,
okay. I guess I'll do mine next because, like I said, when I saw this in theaters, I really enjoyed it because it was opening up new avenues for the story, for the franchise to grow. I expected answers to the questions that I had heading into it, and all these years later, knowing those answers, like 90% of those answers are not forthcoming, that leaves this as a weird. There's so many loose threads just flapping in the breeze from this movie that if I look at it now and sit through it like I did a few days ago, I can't bring myself to think of it as fondly because I know it's an aberration. It had a lot of promise and it just got like cut off at the knees. So in light of that, I am giving this one a 4.5 out of 10 just because it set the ground for a lot of exploration of like where did these new enemies come from and all this and that, and none of it ever gets answered. So 4.5 out of 10.
it doesn't matter, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
We're gonna get into it, all right.
But also, just Justin, to clarify, are you docking this movie's score?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I feel like you have to rate this
were resolved later.
Yeah, like, you shouldn't hold that.
You can rate it however
movie.
you want, but I'm just clarifying. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am, because if any of this had been capitalized on, it would have been. I probably would have rated it higher. But because so much of it is just left unresolved, unexplored, mentioned, and then just never brought up again, it's like, I'm trying to think of like another.
So you're just like faulting the movie because you're saying, in your opinion, its plot lines ended up going not where they were going to go.
Exactly. Or just not going anywhere because they were just forgotten about or written off or what have you.
Okay.
Because none of it was capitalized on. It is to the movie's detriment.
Okay.
It's I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of something else if that's part of a longer running series that I could use as an example. Like Indiana Jones kind of comes to mind, but those are fairly standalone. If something comes to mind, I'll bring it up a bit later. I don't want to drag this out, but
Have you seen the Ewok movies?
I think we understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's just anyway. I give this movie an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I can't quite rake it as highly as A New Hope, which it is a copy of to a large extent, but I think it is better than most of the Star Wars movies. Well, definitely better than the prequel trilogy. I just, like I said, it hits all the right nostalgic notes for me. I think it works really well as the start of a new trilogy. I agree that the trilogy does not really end as well as it could have. But I'm not going to hold anything that comes afterwards against this movie because I think the movie itself is really enjoyable. So 8 out of 10 for me.
All right. Ladies and gents, we're going to take a pause here at this point and come back to you next week with the second half of the Star Wars movies, including some lively debates we have coming up here for some movies later. Is that Macho Man?
Oh, yeah.
Is that Kool-Aid Man?
Oh, no.
Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, we'll see you next time on Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing for the second part of our ratings.
Bye.
Bye.